Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Here we are again, reading from the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, trying to keep it alive, trying to keep the reading alive. It's testing, it's challenging. Wish we were doing it every day. Well, we are doing some every day. We're also reading Nectar of Devotion with our mentorship group. We just read 4 pages a day, or if you use a device, it's 10 pages. And that means we'll finish up to chapter 19 of Nectar of Devotion.
5 weeks.
5 weeks. So, like that. But this is day 43, so we've read 43 days. And when did we start? Do you remember?
Big, like lockdown time.
Not exactly. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay, so we're going to read...
Dhritarashtra quits home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nitai Das quits
Quit.
home.
Quit.
I'm about to quit home. Okay, so we'll chant the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So it's Canto 1, Chapter 13, Text 1. Dhritarashtra quits home. Quits home. American, no?
I'm going to quit home, like I said.
Sri Sutta Goswami said, while travelling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self from the great sage Maitreya, and then returned to Hastinapur. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired. Purport. Vidura is one of the prominent figures in the history of the Mahabharata. He was conceived by Vyasadeva in the womb of the maidservant of Ambika, mother of Maharaj Pandu. He is the incarnation of Yamaraj. Being cursed by Manduka Muni, he was to become a Shudra. The story is as narrated as follows. Once upon a time, the state police caught... That's what it says. Once upon a time, the state police...
That was the end of the paragraph, man.
No.
Huh?
You ain't got any paragraph end. Okay. Once upon a time, the state police caught some thieves who had concealed themselves in the hermitage of Manduka Muni. The police constables, as usual, arrested all the thieves and Manduka Muni along with them. The magistrate specifically punished the Muni to death by being pierced with a lance. When he was just to be pierced, the news reached the king, and he at once stopped the act on consideration of his being a great Muni. The king personally begged the Muni's pardon for the mistake of his men, and the saint at once went to Yamaraj, who prescribes the destiny of the living beings. Yamaraj, being questioned by the Muni, replied that the Muni in his childhood pierced an ant with a sharpened straw, and for that reason he was put into difficulty. The Muni thought it unwise on the part of Yamaraj that he was punished for his childish innocence, and thus the Muni cursed Yamaraj to become a Shudra, and this Shudra incarnation of Yamaraj was known as Vidura, the Shudra brother of Dhritarashtra and Maharaj Pandu. But this Shudra son of the Kuru dynasty was equally treated by Bhishmadev, along with his other nephews, and in due course Vidura was married with a girl who was also born in the womb of a Shudrani by a Brahmana. Although Vidura did not inherit the property of his father, the brother of Bhishmadev, still he was given sufficient state property by Dhritarashtra, the elder brother of Vidura. Vidura was very much attached to his elder brother, and all along he tried to guide him on the right path. During the fratricidal war of Kurukshetra, Vidura repeatedly implored his elder brother to do justice to the sons of Pandu. But Duryodhana did not like such interference by his uncle, and thus he practically insulted Vidura. This resulted in Vidura's leaving home for pilgrimage and taking instructions from Maitreya.
Text 2, the 13th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. After asking various questions and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. Vidura retired from putting questions before Maitreya Muni when he was convinced by Maitreya Rishi that the summum bonum of life is to be finally situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord Shri Krishna, who is Govinda, or one who satisfies his devotees in all respects. The conditioned soul, the living being in material existence, seeks happiness by employing his senses in the modes of materialism, but that cannot give him satisfaction. He then searches after the supreme truth by the empiric, philosophical, speculative method and intellectual feats. But if he does not find the ultimate goal, he again goes down to material activities and engages himself in various philanthropic and altruistic works, which all fail to give him satisfaction. So neither fruitive activities nor dry philosophical speculation can give one satisfaction because by nature a living being is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and all the Vedic literatures give him direction towards the ultimate end. The Bhagavad Gita 15:15 confirms this statement.
Like Vidura, an inquisitive conditioned soul must approach a bona fide spiritual master like Maitreya, and my intelligent inquirers must try to know everything about karma, fruitive activities, jnana, philosophical research for the supreme truth, and yoga, the linking process of spiritual realization. One who is not seriously inclined to put questions before a spiritual master need not accommodate a show-bottled spiritual master, nor should a person who may be a spiritual master for others pose to be so if he is unable to engage his disciple ultimately in the transcendental loving service of Lord Sri Krishna. Vidura was successful in approaching such a spiritual master like Maitreya, and he got the ultimate goal of life, bhakti unto Govinda. Thus there was nothing to be known further about spiritual progress.
Text 3 and 4. Turn on the lights, it's dark. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhisthira, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjay, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of the Kauravas, and other ladies with children, all hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long period. Purport. Gandhari, the ideal chaste lady in the history of the world, she was the daughter of Maharaj Subal, the king of Gandhara, now Kandahar in Kabul. And in her maiden state she worshipped Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is generally worshipped by Hindu maidens to get a good husband. My wife worshipped Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is generally worshipped by Hindu maidens to get a good husband. Gandhari satisfied Lord Shiva, and by his benediction to obtain 100 sons, she betrothed to Dhritarashtra, despite his being blind forever. When Gandhari came to know that her would-be husband was a blind man, to follow her life companion, she decided to become voluntarily blind. So she wrapped up her eyes with many silk linens, and she was married to Dhritarashtra under the guidance of her elder brother Shakuni. She was the most beautiful girl of her time, and she was equally qualified by her womanly qualities, which endeared every member of the Kaurava court. But despite all her good qualities, she had the natural frailties of a woman, and she was envious of Kunti. When the latter gave birth to a male child, both the queens were pregnant, but Kunti first gave birth to a male child. Thus Gandhari became angry and gave a blow to her own abdomen. As a result, she gave birth to a lump of flesh only. But since she was a devotee of Vyasadeva, by the instruction of Vyasadeva, the lump was divided into 100 parts, and each part gradually developed to become a male child. Thus, her ambition to become the mother of 100 sons was fulfilled, and she began to nourish all the children according to her exalted position. When the intrigue of the battle of Kurukshetra was going on, she was not in favor of fighting with the Pandavas. Rather, she blamed Dhritarashtra her husband for such a fratricidal war. She desired that the state be divided into two parts in the sons of Pandu and her own, for the sons of Pandu and her own. She was very affected when all her sons died in the battle of Kurukshetra, as you would be, and she wanted to curse Bhimasen and Yudhisthira, but she was checked by Vyasadeva. Her mourning over the death of Duryodhana and Dushashan before Lord Krishna was very pitiful, and Lord Krishna pacified her by transcendental messages. She was equally aggrieved on the death of Karna, and she described to Lord Krishna the lamentation of Karna's wife. She was pacified by Srila Vyasadeva when she showed her dead sons, then promoted to the heavenly kingdoms. She died along with her husband in the jungles of the Himalayas near the mouth of the Ganges. She burned in a forest fire. Maharaj Yudhisthira performed the death ceremony of his uncle and aunt.
Prita, the daughter of Maharaj Suryasena and sister of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna's father. Later she was adopted by Maharaj Kunti Bhoja, and hence she is known as Kunti. She is the incarnation of the success potency of the personality of Godhead. The heavenly denizens from the upper planets used to visit the palace of Kunti Bhoja, and Kunti was engaged for their reception. She also served the great mystic sage Durvas, and being satisfied by her faithful service, Durvas Muni gave her a mantra by which it was possible for her to call for any demigod she pleased. As a matter of inquisitiveness, she at once called for the sun god, who desired copulent with her. But she declined, but the sun god assured her immunity from virgin adulteration, and so she agreed to his proposal. As a result of this couplement, she became pregnant, and Karna was born by her. By the grace of the sun, she again turned into a virgin girl, but being afraid of her parents, she quitted the newly born child Karna. After that, when she actually selected her own husband, she preferred Pandu to be her husband. Maharaj Pandu later wanted to retire from family life and adopted the renounced order of life. Kunti refused to allow her husband to adopt such life, but at last Maharaj Pandu gave her permission to become a mother of sons by calling some other suitable personalities. Kunti did not accept this proposal at first, but when vivid examples were set by Pandu, she agreed. Thus, by dint of the mantra awarded by Durvas Muni, she called for Dharmaraj, and thus Yudhishthira was born. She called for the demigod Vayu, and thus Bhim was born. She called for Indra, the king of heaven, and thus Arjuna was born. The other two sons, named Nakul and Sahadev, were begotten by Pandu himself in the womb of Madri. Later on, Maharaj Pandu died at an early age, for which Kunti was so aggrieved that she fainted. Two co-wives, namely Kunti and Madhuri, decided that Kunti should live for the maintenance of the 5 minor children. The Pandavas and Madhuri should accept the sati rituals by meeting voluntary death along with her husband. This agreement was endorsed by great sages like Satyasringa and others present on the occasion.
I thought that Nakul and Sahadev were the sons of the Ashwini Kumars.
I've read that, so Kunti gave the mantras like that to Madhuri, and but they're considered, Madhuri's children. That's the point. They're considered.
Yeah, they're her children. That's for sure.
But I read that she gave the mantra.
They were begotten by Pandu himself.
Yeah, interesting.
Because he left his body.
Because
with her.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. The intrigue of Mahabharata. Later on, when the Pandavas were banished from the kingdom by the intrigues of Duryodhana, Kunti followed her sons, and she equally faced all sorts of difficulties during those days. During the forest life, one demon girl, Hidimba, wanted Bhima as her husband. Bhima refused, but then a girl approached Kunti and Yudhisthira. They ordered Bhima to accept her proposal and give her a son. As a result of this combination, Ghatotkacha was born, and he fought very valiantly with his father against the Kauravas. In their forest life, they lived with a Brahmin family that was in trouble because of one Bakasura demon. And Kunti offered Bhima to kill the Bakasura to protect the Brahmin family against troubles created by the demon. She advised Yudhisthira to start for Panchaladesh. Draupadi was gained in this Panchaladesh by Arjuna, but by order of Kunti, all 5 of the Pandava brothers became equally the husbands of Panchali, or Draupadi. She was married with 5 Pandavas in the presence of Vyasadeva. Kunti Dev never forgot her first child, Karna, and after Karna's death in the battle of Kurukshetra, she lamented and admitted before her other sons that Karna was her eldest son, prior to her marriage with Maharaj Pandu. Such intrigue. Her prayers for the Lord after the battle of Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna was going back home, are excellently explained. Later she went to the forest with Gandhari for severe penance. She used to take meals after each 30 days. She finally sat down in profound meditation and later burned to ashes in a forest fire.
They're not really the end isn't so nice, is it? They seem to all burn in forest fire.
That would be nice for anyone.
I don't want to burn in a forest fire, man. Draupadi is the most chaste daughter of Maharaj Drupad, and partly an incarnation of goddess Sachi, the wife of Indra. Maharaj Drupad performed a great sacrifice under the superintendence of the sage Yaja. By his first offering, Drishtadyumna was born, and by the second offering, Draupadi was born. She is therefore the sister of Drishtadyumna, and she is also named Panchali. The 5 Pandavas married her as a common wife, and each of them begot a son in her. Maharaj Yudhishthira begot a son named Pratibit. Bhimsena begot a son named Sutta Soma. Arjuna begot Shrutakirti. Nakul begot Satanika, and Sahadev begot Shrutakarma. She is described as the most beautiful lady, equal to her mother-in-law Kunti. During her birth, there was an arrow message that she should be called Krishna. The same message also declared that she was born to kill many a Kshatriya. By dint of her blessings from Shankara, she was awarded 5 husbands equally qualified. When she preferred to select her own husband, princes and kings were invited from all the countries of the world. She was married with the Pandavas during their exile in the forest, and when they went back home, Maharaj Drupad gave them immense wealth as a dowry. She was well received by all the daughters-in-law of Dhritarashtra. When she was lost in a gambling game, she was forcibly dragged into the assembly hall, and an attempt was made by Dushashan to see her naked beauty, even though there were elderly persons like Bhishma and Drona present. She was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and by her praying the Lord himself became an unlimited garment to save her from the insult. A demon of the name Jatasura kidnapped her, but her second husband Bhimsena killed the demon and saved her. She saved the Pandavas from the curse of Maharishi Durvas by the grace of Lord Krishna. When the Pandavas lived incognito in the palace of Virat, Kichaka was attracted by her exquisite beauty, and by arrangement with Bhim, the devil was killed and she was saved. She was very much aggrieved when her 5 sons were killed by Ashwatthama. At the last stage, she accompanied her husband Yudhishthira and others and fell on the way. The cause of her falling was explained by Yudhishthira, but when Yudhishthira entered the heavenly planet, he saw Draupadi gloriously present there as the goddess of fortune in the heavenly planet.
Subhadra, daughter of Vasudeva and sister of Lord Krishna. She was not only a very dear daughter of Vasudeva, but also a very dear sister of both Krishna and Baladev. The two brothers and sisters are represented in the famous Jagannath temple of Puri, and the temple is still visited by thousands of pilgrims daily. This temple is in remembrance of the Lord's visit at Kurukshetra during an occasion of solar eclipse, and his subsequent meeting with the residents of Vrindavan. The meeting of Radha and Krishna during this occasion is a very pathetic story. And Lord Sri Chaitanya, in the ecstasy of Radharani, always pined for Lord Krishna at Jagannath Puri. While Arjuna was at Dwarka, he wanted to have Subhadra as his queen, and he expressed his desire to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna knew that his elder brother, Lord Baladev, was arranging for her marriage elsewhere. And since he did not dare to go against the arrangement of Baladev, he advised Arjuna to kidnap Subhadra. So, when all of them were on a pleasure trip on the Raivata hill, Arjuna managed to kidnap Subhadra according to the plan of Sri Krishna. Sri Baladev was very angry at Arjuna, and he wanted to kill him. But Lord Krishna implored his brother to excuse Arjuna. Then Subhadra was duly married with Arjuna, and Abhimanyu was born of Subhadra. At the premature death of Abhimanyu, Subhadra was very mortified. But at the birth of Parikshit, she was happy and solaced.
Text 5. With great delight they all approached him as if life had returned to their bodies. They exchanged obeisances and welcomed each other with embraces. Purport. In the absence of consciousness, the limbs of the body remain inactive. But when consciousness returns, the limbs and senses become active, and existence itself becomes delightful. Vidura was so dear to the members of the Kaurava family that his long absence from the palace was comparable to inactivity. All of them were feeling acute separation from Vidura, and therefore his return to the palace was joyful for all.
Text 6. Due to anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhisthira then arranged to offer sitting accommodation and a reception. Text 7. After Vidura ate sumptuously and took sufficient rest, he was comfortably seated. Then the king began to speak to him, and all who were present there to listen. Purport. King Yudhisthira was expert in reception also, even in the case of his family members. Vidura was well received by all family members by exchange of embraces and obeisances. After that, bathing and arrangements for a sumptuous dinner were made, and then he was given sufficient rest. After finishing his rest, he was offered a comfortable place to sit, and then the king began to talk about all happenings, both family and otherwise. This is the proper way to receive a beloved friend, or even an enemy. Or even an enemy received at home should be so well received that he will not feel any fearful situation. An enemy is always afraid of his enemy, but this should not be so when he is received at home by his enemy. This means that a person, when received at home, should be treated as a relative. So, what to speak of a family member like Vidura, who was a well-wisher for all the members of the family? Thus, Yudhisthira began to speak in the presence of all the other members.
Text 8. Maharaj Yudhisthira said, my uncle... Oh, should we stop here?
Yeah, I think we finished it.
Okay, we're going to stop here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.
Haribol.
See you next time.